Breaths. Welcome to everyone. We have 102 people on so far. This is a thrilling way to spend a Sunday evening, especially a Sunday evening where if I was not here on Zoom with you, I would probably be a little bit of a neurotic, wonderful human. So my name is Will Neville Rabin. I'm co-executive director and executive editor at Torrey House Press. I have the privilege of basically just saying hello and good night here, and we get to spend most of the time this evening with three of the most brilliant and unbelievable people I have had the privilege to get to know in my life and in my career. Pam Houston, Blake Spalding, and Kirsten Johanna Allen. You will learn more about them over the course of this conversation, which Kirsten is going to both moderate and participate in because she's magic like that. Speaking of deep breaths, I feel like we all need one. So I'm going to ask anyone who feels like it to join me in just a bit of breathing. If it feels a little bit condescending, I promise it is not meant that way. It's because I learned this from my then 3-year-old when he was in preschool, and I make folks and rooms full of people do it all the time. I have never made a Zoom full of people do it, but bear with me, we are on a journey. So this is called an elevator breath, and you start with your hands. You breathe in as your hands go up, and breathe out as they go down. And we're gonna just do 3 of those and let the rest of the world melt away. Last one. And shake it out. All right. If you were too embarrassed to do that, no one can see you. It's fine. You can do it at home. I promise it feels really great. It doesn't feel as good as being here tonight with each and every one of you. So thank you so much again for joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten and Pam and Blake. Feel free, if you have questions, drop them into the Q&A feature. I will be looking at that throughout and passing those along. And with that, I'm gonna turn off my microphone and turn off my video and take it away.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you, Will.
Pam, Blake, everyone joining us on Zoom tonight. Welcome. Thank you for your forward. And we've got a lot of great things to talk about tonight. I want to just plan that I'm based in Salt Lake City. I think Blake is coming to us from is that right? And you also use in Salt Lake time.
Kirsten, your audio is strange for me. Is it strange for you too, Blake?
Yeah, it's kind of garbled. I'm not sure why.
It's almost like your microphone isn't great. Like it's like buzzing a little.
Or like, is it touching anything?
This in our stuff. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Much better.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
You asked me a question, but I didn't understand it.
Yes, got it. I was like, where are you joining us from, Pam?
I'm in Salt Lake City. I'm headed home tomorrow for the first time in a long time, but tonight I am in a beautiful home in Salt Lake City where I spoke to about 50 or 60 people earlier today about reproductive rights. It was a fundraiser for organizations in Utah that support reproductive freedom at my friend Eliza Hitz's house. And so this is event 2 of the day. And I head home for the first time in a month tomorrow.
Fantastic. I was sorry to miss that event in Salt Lake. I was driving from Paonia. And gosh, as I was driving and thinking about our conversation today, driving through the gorgeous, gorgeous West with all of its beautiful, beautiful light and mountains and deserts, I was just feeling so grateful that I get to be coming here to talk with you about freedom and love and joy. I guess I want to just kind of throw out a question. What's your temperature right now? We're 2 days away from a pretty big election. Pam, you've been on the road for over a month, talking with all kinds of people about Without Exception. Blake, you're winding down your big season at Hell's Backbone Grill. Yeah, how does November 3rd feel, ladies?
I can go first. Do you want me to go first, Blake?
Yes, please.
I will say, I'm having a hard time tamping down my excitement, honestly. And it hasn't been that way consistently. I think like many people, when Kamala was announced, I was really joyful. Like I felt like I was sort of flying around my life, smiling and celebrating. And then I think we all fell into a doom scrolling hole at some point. And there were a few weeks in there that I really felt nervous. And I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm not nervous. And the reason I feel nervous is because I think the consequences, if the worst thing happens, are so dire for so many people and many of the things I care about most in the universe. However, having spent 38 of the last 40 something nights in rooms full of humans, largely women, but not exclusively women, lots of non-binary people and lots of men. I have heard the passion in their voices about reproductive freedom, about the environment, about all the things that they care most about. And it's hard for me to believe all this passion that I am hearing in these rooms and all these women who are ready to give up their shame and step into their power and make a world that people can thrive in. It's just hard for me to imagine that that's not going to add up to a victory on Tuesday. It's it's only a sampling of the people out there, but it's been so consistent and people are so motivated in a way that I didn't see in 2020 or 2016.
Yeah, we'll come back to some of that. Blake, how's the temperature for you? How you doing?
I mean, I think I'm kind of all over the place, if I'm being honest. I've been, I wake up in the middle of the night and my practice has been, because I'm Buddhist, instead of just lying there and perseverating, I'm kind of feeling into the fact that there are literally millions upon millions of people who are also awake with me in the night, wondering what's going to happen, and really trying to like imagine love infusing that sphere, because I do believe that love is the opposite. Maybe it's not the opposite, but in the way I think of things, love is the opposite of fear. And I'm sure there's people who would have other opposites, but that's my personal kind of way of relating to it. At least it's an antidote to fear sometimes. But I also, because of the restaurant, it's been very busy. I had a man come in last night from Cincinnati he walked in and he was like, "Are you the owner?" And I said, "Yes." And he just, was dressed like a man, and didn't see, and he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Sure." And he's like, the signs, you have so many signs. I feel so safe and good here. And so I hugged him. But I said, well, the sign thing is kind of a strategy because all over town, someone's pulling all the Republicans for Harris, the Kamala
Yeah.
wall signs. And so I was like, so by having like 40, I think it makes it really hard for them no one's taken any because it's kind of a daunting task. They'd have to be here too long and then maybe they'd get caught. So we haven't lost our signs yet, but I feel like Pam, I feel like love is gonna win. And I feel a lot of love in the world. I talk to 200 people or so a night, and they're all really hopeful and also fired up, and people that are phone banking and people that are doing everything they can in a way that I also haven't seen before. So I'm not I was more afraid maybe 2 weeks ago, and now I feel kind of excited.
Yeah, I'm there too. I'm excited. I no matter what happens on Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whenever we actually have a result, um, one of the things that I just couldn't stop thinking about as I was driving, I was listening to music. I don't very often listen to music, but I was listening to the Chicks and I was listening to Miranda Lambert. And, there's so much power in the messages that women are giving each other in so many different ways. And from my experience, N of some, women under 35 are just not having it. They're not going to do proximity to power garbage that, women of our generation were kind of raised with. That's why 53% of white women, voted for Trump in 2016. There's this perceived safety and proximity to power. And, we're not having it anymore. And I think younger women are like, no, we're stepping into our own power. Thanks very much. And of course, that comes from, generations of work to make that a possibility. But I am so excited about younger women and men and non-binary people seizing that and stepping into it. We're not going to have, we're not going back. We're not going back. Yeah. As you've looked back at your thinking and reflection on reproductive freedom in your lives, how has your perception of your own reproductive freedom changed in these last couple of years? I mean, we know a lot from Pam because she's written about it in this book. But still, I think, Pam, you've talked to so many people, in the course of these book events. Is there anything that's kind of changed for you in how you express or experience your history of reproductive freedom?
Well, I think it's become very clear to me at these events, all of the conversations I've had with women, some of whom are telling strangers in the room about their abortions for the first time, some of whom it's like it's a casual topic of conversation, everything in between. I think we're at an inflection point. That's how I feel right now. I feel like we have been pushed against a wall, beyond anything I expected to see again in my lifetime. And, we like every week, there's another woman who's bleeding out in a parking lot, because of Trump's abortion ban. And I feel like it's so clear now that this is a war on women. They have stated the terms very clearly. And that, it was never about saving babies. It was always about controlling women. So like now that that's all out in the open, like many things that are out in the open, I have such a hard time imagining women just going like, oh, well, okay, I guess we'll deal with it. like the women that I'm seeing, I mean, I don't know what it looks like because we've never had a presidential candidate who threatened to use the army against his own people. We've never had that before. So that's a new one. So none of us knows what that would look like. But shy of massive amounts of people being afraid for their lives, which could happen, I just don't think this group of women who are alive right now, and by that, I mean us, us elders, we elders here in the room, but I also mean, the 30-year-olds that I also meet along the way. Like I can imagine that we are so motivated now. I said this before, but to like drop the shame that was never ours to begin with. We have been made to feel ashamed, not just for having an abortion. We've been made to feel ashamed if we hurt a man's feelings. Real shame. And that's borrowed.
Yeah.
We took that on. I don't know why, but I'm ready to let that go. Like that's one thing I'm personally ready to let go. And I see many, many women who feel that way, who understand that if we drop that shame, we move forward, we make communities of women who support each other as a lot of us have seen on threads in the last few months, like, and real communities in real in real physical places, landscapes. Um, I think it's unlimited what we can accomplish, you know? And I think the shame factor has kept us down, effectively, even me. And I'm not willing to do that anymore. And I see many people who aren't willing to do that anymore. And if we get a good outcome on whatever day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think there will be massive celebration, but also forward momentum to putting pressure on the new administration to build a world that's more equitable, a country that's more equitable in so many ways, not just with women, but so many ways. And I think if we don't get the result we want, I think there's going to be a lot of underground organizing.
I agree. I agree. Blake, reproductive freedom in your life. How is your kind of experience and reflection of that? Has that changed over these last couple of years or these last couple of months?
I I think, I'm 60, so and then I am childless by choice, and I have, enjoyed my sexuality over the course of my life. I've loved many men, and I think what I've been really noticing, and this is strangely intimate to talk about. I don't even really know who's on the list of participants, but I
Just a couple
hello,
hundred
hello
people.
all of you. But I think really noticing, just like, there's a reckoning in all of us who are this age of internalized over culture messaging, and just realizing like kind of my own shame around my sexuality, or the way that I had desire, or the way that I judged people who got pregnant and needed potentially to have an abortion, and then the way I wanted to be supportive, but maybe I wasn't as supportive as I should have been because I had internalized shit, and really like leaving that, like it's this isn't just in the last few months, but Pam, your book is so, am I allowed to swear? But fucking galvanizing, like it changed the way I thought about a lot of things in my own life, in other people's lives, and the way culture and messaging and kind of like stay small. You're supposed to have under so many a number of lovers, if you have sex just because it's fun, like maybe there's something wrong with you, maybe you're like this or like that, and like, just noticing the way I carried shame, and the way that I maybe, made other people feel shame, like, which this is very confessional, and also feeling like I don't even want to have shame about that. Like I just want to be like, I know more, and when you know more, you do better. But I'm grateful for your book, Pam, and I've been giving it to everyone that I can think of and being like, please read this, it will help you, because it helped me, your book, so much. And that's probably the thing. And then I like you, I'll just say, like, I've been I've been dreading this moment. We saw it coming when, even when Hillary ran, just like the level of hatred of women was so off the charts for me. And I expected it to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be that bad. And that was pretty sobering. And I am really relieved to see that, Kamala is managing to withstand that. But I think all women that put themselves in the public spotlight, a Pam, a Blake, Kirsten, all of our friends who go out and say things that people might not agree with, it's vulnerable, and I don't know if I'm totally making sense, but I want to finish by saying, I feel fierce in a different way. And those who know me know I've always been a little bit fierce, but I feel fiercer maybe, and I think it's a combination of what's happening in the world and feeling very protective of young and non-binary people and people that are at risk, and women in general, and also it's the combination of being educated by your book. Thank you, Pam. I've been meaning to call you up and say so, but it's just I've read it 3 times now, and I'm getting different things each time. There's a lot in there for it's a little very dense book.
It's so terrific, Pam. As I as I kind of think about my reproductive freedom, I do have 2 children, 2 adult children. I was so excited to have each of them. I'm so grateful that I got to be a mother, and from the get-go, it just it meant so much to me that I was able to make that decision when I wanted to and how I wanted to. And it still just kind of overwhelms me. And it's not as though that were under threat for me in any kind of tangible way, but it's just such a big deal. It's such a big deal to be able to make that choice. When my son Matt was maybe 9 or 10 months old, no, he wasn't even that old. He would have been like 6 or 7 months old. He was one of these cherubic looking babies with like doingy blonde curls, and people would stop me in the grocery store and say, "Oh, he's so beautiful." I took him up to the Utah State Capitol for the first public protest that I ever attended. And I didn't go with any friends or anything. I just took my little baby up there because there was a bad abortion bill that was going to come out, that was being debated in the legislature. And it just hit me so hard. I loved this little baby with everything I had. And I just wanted every little baby to have that, that every little person should come into the world experiencing that they were the greatest thing ever. And that's so I feel so fierce about that. And of course who was it, Vance? I guess no, it wasn't Vance. Who was the creepy dude who was like, "I don't know why women over 50 are even caring about abortion," whoever that was. And it's like,
That was Vance.
it was Vance. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I cared about it for me. I care about it for my daughter. I care about it for all people to be able to make that choice about having children or not having children, being able to create the life that you want to create. It's that word fierce, I felt fiercer and fiercer over time. And I think that for me, that fierceness overtakes fear. And it's empowering, it's exciting. If reproductive freedom doesn't win on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, or whatever, there's just an army of people that are going to be arm in arm and in the streets and not going back anyway.
I'd love to say that's beautiful, Kirsten. Thank you for that. And I guess what I will say is that like my feeling of ferocity, just to tie into the the name of our webinar tonight, really is born from like a holy burning sacred love for women, this planet, beings that don't have voices, that can't vote, for my friends, my family, the people I don't know, the people I'm seeing in the videos at the marches and at the rallies, and just really feeling like, what if we had a country, a government that reckoned with our past trauma and our past genocides and our past destruction of women, and the millions of women that were in the country, not millions, the women that were burned at the stake for being difficult. And what if we took a quantum leap into a new way of being in this? And what if it was based in love of each other rather than fear and hatred and control and colonizer patriarchal mind? These are my musings. Pam, will you help
I
me?
love it.
Pam,
I'm
yeah,
in a group
Kirsten.
chat in my neighborhood with like, I don't know, 150 women or something. And it is the most empowering, do you have a cup of sugar kind of communities. I mean, it's amazing. I love whatever comes through on that group chat, whether it's, I have too many tomatoes. Does somebody want to come get them? Or I don't have the size of wrench. Does somebody have one in their garage they could lend me? Or, I need to send a computer up to my daughter at college somewhere. Is somebody going that way? I don't even know personally most of these people, but there's such a wealth of hugs every time I tune into this conversation that is about I have something that I can help somebody or I need some help. And I think there are so many places like that that we're going to be able to tap into and that no matter what happens with this election. We have a question that has come in from Teresa. She says, thank you for acknowledging the hatred of women that is permeating. Do you think that as Kamala takes up the reins, we might be able to chase it out more and therefore resolve some of it? Do you think that as Kamala takes up the reins, we might be able to chase it out more and therefore resolve some of it? Blake, what do you think?
I want to defer to Pam first.
Even before that question was asked, I was looking in my Facebook feed for something that I posted the other day, which is an Adrienne Rich quote. Adrienne Rich was so important to me as a young writer, for all the obvious reasons. But I met her in 1992 at the Bay Area Book Awards, where she was getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Cowboys Are My Weakness was nominated for an award, which it did not win. But that was completely irrelevant because I literally got to fall on my knees at the feet of Adrienne Rich, which was a very important thing. And I met my best friend Fenton Johnson that night. So it was a great night for me. But in any case, this quote, I think, is really profound. And I'll just read it real quick. It's, women have been driven mad, gaslighted for centuries by the refutation of our experience and our instincts in a culture which validates only male experience. The truth of our bodies and our minds has been mystified to us. We therefore have a primary obligation to each other not to undermine each other's sense of reality for the sake of expediency, not to gaslight each other. Women have often felt insane when cleaving to the truth of our experience. Our future depends on the sanity of each of us, and we have a profound stake beyond the personal in the project of describing our reality as candidly and fully as we can to each other. I love that quote. I read it in the 70s when it was written, or when that book came out, which I think was 78. And when I read it just the other day, I was like, oh, this is why I wrote without exception. Like this exactly. That last sentence, we have a profound stake beyond the personal in the project of describing our reality as candidly and fully as we can to each other. And that's what without exception is. It is my fullest and most candid take on my 3 abortions and my experience with being a woman during Roe v. Wade. And I think to answer your question, I do think that with Kamala, we have a real chance to legitimize female experience. I mean, I just keep thinking of last night on Saturday Night Live. I don't know how many people saw it, but I bet everybody saw it. But if you didn't see it, it's worth watching the cold open because it's Kamala and the actress who plays Kamala like just looking at each other through a mirror and just like laughing. They can't stop laughing. And the studio audience is going crazy, and they are like laughing like girls together. And it is the most beautiful thing. The whole thing is great, but that part where the audience is cheering and they can't stop laughing, like, you know, it's then you say, you know, of course, how can this even be close? Right? The thing we keep saying. But that spirit, I just wrote a little piece for a magazine in Boston about being on the road with Without Exception. And my first sentence is like, I didn't think there would be so much laughter in the room. And I think every time those of us who have had experience with abuse of various kinds, which I certainly have in my young life, every time we see her stand up to him or not be afraid of him or deny what she's being accused of and speak the truth of her experience as a Black, you know, South Asian woman, East Asian woman in this situation, something just expands in our chests. We're like, she's like our big sister, you know, who's standing up, who's not afraid to stand up for us. That's how I feel whenever she like makes a face at him or whatever. And I think that is so important. I think that those tiny validations of what it is to be a woman and to laugh through the pain and to laugh through the inequity and to like hug or to, you know, the way she takes those little children's faces in her hands and, you know, and it's like she already is validating our experience. She's validating the ways that we have to shake off how it has always been. She's doing that really every day. And I think it will be more and more of it, you know, in the same way that like we here in the West and in places, you know, all this unceded Native territory, you know, with Deb Haaland coming in, like this little thing got accomplished and this little thing got accomplished and this little thing got accomplished. And that adds up to a lot of things. And so I think it'll be like that. It'll be the way we're seeing recognition of, you know, at least a partial recognition of the genocides we committed on the Native people who lived here, because Deb Haaland is in that position. And I think it'll be bigger than that, but that sort of shifting. I hope so.
Yeah. You know, when you talk about laughter, right, in the rooms when you're talking about Without Exception, I'm thinking about the Park City event that you did recently, you know, with joy and laughter and sometimes tears in the room and an armed police officer at the door. And the you know, it just felt so strange to have this super safe, happy, joyful community experience with somebody with a whole lot of guns. But she was wonderful. She just smiled and was grateful when I handed her a copy of the book. And I just kind of thought that there's a reclaiming of laughter in a way, of women's laughter. I think one of the pieces of shame has been about laughing when we're uncomfortable or to put somebody at ease in an uncomfortable situation. And what we saw with Maya Rudolph and Kamala Harris last night, and what I've seen in all the Without Exception events that I've been to that you've done, Pam, is just reclaiming laughter as a part of community, a part of who we are, and a part of power too. Exactly. Blake, anything that you wanted to chime in about, you know, as Kamala kind of,
I mean,
should
just
she
that
should
woman,
yeah.
just to that woman's question, Teresa. Hi, Teresa. I think that for any kind of reckoning with any kind of anything that's been bad and hard and awful, whether it's the oppression of women or indigenous genocide or enslavement of Black people or the, you know, the ruthless brutalization of LGBTQIA people, all of it, it has to be named. And you know, there has to be ground breaking movements and people that normalize the new reality, which is to the Adrienne Rich quote, you know, to say like, this was my experience and it was real. And if I tried to write a list of the times like that I was sexually harassed or bullied or experienced sexual violence in my life, it would seem absurd, except that I think most 60-year-old women who entered the workforce young or grew up in unsafe circumstances have these same lists. And, you know, I even with my restaurant have made like such a hard effort to not have my restaurant be like a pirate ship where that stuff is normalized or okay. And I'm constantly having to still uh, address it or fight it or notice it or call it out or whatever it is, whether it's with employees to each other or it's to um, guests to, you know, or you know, whatever it is, it exists in the world. And so I think by I mean, Kamala means lotus flower in Sanskrit, and I'm Buddhist, and so it's in like my sadhanas that I recite every day. The Kamala, the lotus flower that arises out of the darkness and the mud to bloom to represent spiritual awakening. This cannot be a coincidence. I don't know. I've never met anyone else named Kamala. Maybe all of you have, but it's so wild to me that this is her name. So I have to assume that she's going to win and that there's going to be a huge shift. And sure, the hatred may get more putrid, but can it get worse than it is right now? Like when they're literally trying to say that it's going to be like in Project 25, sure, you know, we're going to make it legal for men to beat their wives again and no, you know, take away no fault divorce and all of the crazy stuff that like would rock us back to the 1600s or whatever. Like it's beyond imagining. And so sure, there's going to be some hate, but it's sort of like if you don't see the infection, then you don't know to clean it out. And there's a major infection in our country.
Yeah, and I think what I've kind of heard from both of you here, and I agree, is that as women, as non-binary people, as we tell our stories, there's power in that, and it is a power that can have an overwhelming effect on the hatred if we can help each other avoid the shame that comes with that kind of hatred and that misogyny and that abuse. Before we take another question, for those who are coming in part way, Pam Houston and Blake Spalding and I are talking about freedom and joy and the situation here where we are 2 days before an election, but we're also here around this book that Pam has written, Without Exception, Reclaiming Abortion, Personhood, and Freedom, that Pam and I thought up together a couple of years ago in Santa Fe after an event with a book that Pam had contributed to, First and Wildest, The Gila Wilderness at 100, a collection, an anthology that was edited by Elizabeth Hightower Allen. And Pam, do you want to just kind of jump in and share a little bit about your perception of how we kind of conceived this baby? And then we'll take
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know, we were in the back of the bookstore at Garcia Street, and Dobbs was imminent. It hadn't quite made it down the pike, but everyone knew
I think it had been leaked, but not announced.
Yeah, and so we knew it was coming. And we were screaming to each other about it. And I said to Kirsten, you know what I realized, crazy thing, I got my first period in January of 1973, which is, of course, when the decision for Roe v. Wade was handed down. And I am just now, this was 2022, at the 12-month menopause marker. just as Roe was going to die, so that my lifespan, my reproductive lifespan and the lifespan of Roe v. Wade were identical. And that felt meaningful to me as a person who was childless by choice and knew that all along. And so I said that to Kirsten, and really without missing a beat, she said, do you want to write a book about that for the 2024 election? And I said, yes, I do. So that's how this book came to be. Yeah, and I had to write it very fast because we had to get it out by September 3rd, which is when it came out 2 months ago today.
We did it. We did it, Pam. It's a great book. We have a question from Allie. Can you speak to all the people who are not voting because of Gaza? I feel helpless and frustrated when I try to talk to my colleagues and my friends who are saying that Kamala is the same as Trump because of this issue. Any response from either of you on that?
I can say one thing that I saw yesterday. I mean, I've had these conversations. I work with young people all the time, and I've had this conversation many times, and it sort of breaks my heart because, like you, Allie, I can't think of one single systemically undervalued group that will benefit from those people not voting. Of course, everyone's entitled to do what they want, but I did see this yesterday from Robin Cost-Lewis, who's a writer I admire. And she said this, which I think was a direct response to it. And if this is the Alley, I think it is, I can text you this later, but they've always been there. Robin Cost-Lewis says, bombs have always been falling. This country has always been on the wrong side of history. Stop debating the obvious as if this is anything new. Stop getting high from scratching out each other's eyes or from the need to be right. Stop giving in to the privilege of despair and vote. And I thought, well, that says it more strongly than I would have the guts to. But it felt very powerful to me.
Yeah, I'll just say that my friend Rebecca Solnit often says despair is a feeling, not a strategy, and that voting is a chess move, not a love letter. And, even like if you are really talking to someone who's really extreme about it, I think we just have to bless them and say, well, I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that there are people who will vote that see the harm reduction in it, and I think why wouldn't we try having a laughing, beautiful, brilliant Black Asians woman as our president and see if it gets better. But for anything to get better, we have to also get the Congress and keep the Senate and, start moving people off of bad, the fascist stuff of school boards. And, but that really is what it comes down to is, I think just like we can't really convince people that are really committed to voting for Trump, not to vote for Trump particularly. I think we just need to work on convincing who maybe wouldn't vote just because they don't know how or they haven't considered it, and keep hoping that we're enrolling enough people. Because obviously, life will not get better for the Gazans under Trump.
The only other thing I would add to that is, like, in my lifetime and probably beyond that, no one in this country who has ever had enough power and money and so forth to get elected would just make radical change on their own. That's not where those people come from. So it's our job to put someone into power who will listen, at least to us, in the hope that we can push for that change. But I absolutely believe that's our job. And to me, like, there's no question, the idea that they are the same as it's not even comprehensible that someone could think that. You know, I'm not saying that people aren't right to push for radical change, but you have to have someone in the office who will listen.
Someone who will listen. That's kind of everything. It's really everything. So we don't necessarily always get all of the choices that we might want, but we get to choose from among the choices we do have. And Kamala Harris seems like a pretty good choice. We have a question from Taylor. What can those of us who are cis males do to help support, advocate, and care for the women and female presenting people in our lives? And he also has a little addendum, and I believe Pam has a reading to go with the discussion on this one.
I think that's Will's addendum.
Okay, Will's
I know
addendum.
Will really likes this chapter, but I will read it. This is just a little sampling about the good men who are with us, non-binaries and women in this fight, because there are many of them. I've seen them, I've met them, they exist. And I'm only going to read a little portion of this chapter that speaks to this, but this chapter is called Grace. I was at a dinner table at another writers' gathering, this one in Wisconsin. The week before Planned Parenthood Wisconsin resumed offering abortions after more than a year's hiatus following Dobbs, abortion providers across the state had stopped offering abortions, fearing that the termination of Roe v. Wade reverted abortion law there to a law from 1849 that appeared to ban the procedure. And then I talk about that for a while. But back at the dinner at the writers' gathering, I said I had been working to finish this book, and the woman across the table from me said, "That is so interesting," with a look on her face that told me interesting was not the word she was thinking at all. She told me she was extremely active in politics in Northern California, that her work there had convinced her our problem as a nation was radical divisiveness, and her concern with my book was that it would only prove to divide us further. Maybe so, I said vaguely, thinking about a friend of mine who lives in a suburb of San Jose and confessed to me that she had never, not one time in the last 8 years, even seen a MAGA hat in real life. The man catty-corner from me, of unknown party affiliation, cleared his throat and said he didn't understand what all the fuss was about. Why couldn't we just decide when life began and call it good? Wasn't that the real problem? If our objective is to protect babies, he said, then let's just decide at what moment they're babies so we can stop arguing about this all the time. A lead blanket of exhaustion fell over me. I had been up past midnight every night revising this manuscript, teaching all day, nobody's fault but my own. I was formulating a polite sentence about various religions and their ideas about when life begins, when the man sitting next to me, whose name was Jamie, said to the man across the table, "I don't want to speak out of turn here because obviously I am not a woman, but surely you get that none of this was ever about protecting babies." He hesitated and I met his eyes, gave him a slight nod. "Any one of 100 policies these people have put in place," he continued, "or tried to put in place, make it absolutely clear they don't care about babies whatsoever. This is all about controlling women because they fear the power women have when they get together, when they're not overburdened, when they're free to organize. So many of my good male friends are sympathetic to this cause, but I have heard so few of them make this kind of declaration out loud among strangers." I lifted my hand toward Jamie for a quiet high five, but what I really wanted to do was give him a rosewater foot bath. I wanted to gift him a baby elephant from the zoo of exotic pets I do not own. So Taylor, every time a man speaks out to me at a reading, like in a good way, there haven't been any bad men at the readings, to be clear, but every time someone says, "Thank you for what you're doing. I'm so grateful to understand this in the way that you've helped me understand it," whatever positive feedback I get from the few men at the readings, I really, really appreciate. And You know, there's a million women in the room going, why is it better when they do it? Well, it's not better when they do it. It's just a joyful thing, in the same way that Blake and Kirsten were both talking about, like, going forward with love. Like we could, you know, we've got so many big problems to solve, like the climate, you know, just for one thing. And we have so many big problems to solve, you know, reparations for slavery, and if we loved each other, like, generally speaking, you know, like, we could just, like, turn our attention to those things. You know, if we were sort of in it together, we need to get in it together. And so when the men come and speak out and speak up, I really am grateful, because it makes me able to picture a world where we can together say, okay, what are we going to do about reparations? What are we going to do about water?
Absolutely. Paul Schneider asks, you talk about underground movements should Trump win, but I'd like to know more about what you think that looks like. I would like to jump in on that first. After the super terrible election, you know, that was super terrible. I could hardly get out of bed until Hillary Clinton gave her concession speech. And then I was like, oh, maybe I can get out of bed if she can do that. And then, if you remember, within a couple of days, there was this women's march idea that was floating around. And one of my friends, I call her my friend, we call each other our friend from life. We met when we were 7. She said, should we go to DC? Should we go to this thing if it's happening? I was like, absolutely, we should go to this thing when it's happening. And we did. And, you know, there were so many people that we couldn't even move. You know, we were just stuck on the sidewalk. When it was kind of over and it's like, now we're going to leave, it took about 10 minutes just to turn our little group of 4 or 5 women around. And then I looked to the side, and we were near the curb. And suddenly there was an opening at the gutter, which was kind of strange, because there hadn't been an opening for anybody. And it was because there was a woman in a wheelchair being pushed by a man, and everybody was making way for her. And the man was probably in his like 50s or 60s. And he's like, this is my mom, you know, she's 90. And she was like, I'm going to come here and do this. And, you know, just to have a crowd that was not organized in any way organize itself instantly to make sure that this man could get his mother where she needed to go. That's what I think. In response to this question, Paul, underground movements, you know, we'll organize if we got to organize at that level, we'll be organizing at the street level, at the neighborhood level, at the town level. It's just going to so organically happen. That's what I think. Blake, Pam, what do you think?
I think there's going to be a lot of cohabitation. I think women are going to live in communal spaces. I think I always tell my friends who I'm planning to move into in Mancos, if push comes to shove, hopefully you'll let my husband in. He's nice. You know, he's handy. He chops wood, cuts trees down in the forest, and he's generally a wonderful human, and he would be welcome. But I think like-minded people of all genders will commune up for protection, but also for motivation and strategy making to protect other people who have fewer resources. That's what I picture.
Well, I guess that I picture that Kamala's going to win, and we're not going to. And until we get there, I'm not like, people are like, what's your plan? I'm like, my plan is she's gonna win. Like, I can't, like, and I think partly because of the fight for the monument, you know, and all of that. And, you know, it's been hard for me and Jen, my business partner, at the restaurant really since, you know, the very bad election. and then the monument came, and then all the things that happened and the COVID and like I'm really having an exercise in love and faith that despite the fuckery and the shenanigans and the malarkey and whatever the hell we want to call it that's going to go on if they try to steal the election, I think that we're going to prevail. And I'm just going to stick with that. But I did see that when, we were facing the existential for the, crisis for the 660 wild species of bees in the monument and stuff, that people showed up to help in ways that Jen and I would have never imagined. And so I like the women's marches, and I was in the corollary one with Jen in Park City, and there were so many people there, and it was snowing and cold, and the speakers were incredible, and it was a feeling of love. And so I guess what I will say is that it will come out of love. Like if you're fighting against what you hate, the fight's not enlivening, and it typically ends up not going well. If you're fighting for what you love, it's like a different thing. And I think that's really, like, for me, we have to really make an effort to stay in that place of fighting for what we love, because then that is a holy, beautiful, sacred kind of a effort, as opposed to sort of like what we're seeing being done, like with Project 2025. We hate the planet, we hate the women, we hate the brown people, we hate it, we hate. We're gonna constrict it all down into like dark matter, and it's gonna be really yuck. And that is not an enlivening prospect. It's just ugly. And so there's so much beauty in this world, and love and caring for each other. And I wish I could see everybody's faces that are on the Zoom. It's so funny to do these things. I'm like, there's people listening, but I don't know who they are. I can't see them. But I'll just say I love you all. Thank you for, coming and hearing us. And thank you for reading Pam's book and all the Torrey House Press books. And thank you for those of you who are fighting for the planet and fighting for all the good things that we love. I have deep gratitude and love for all of you.
Absolutely. I have a question here from Leanne Joshua, and I think we've kind of answered it, but I love her question. She says, I've taught humor as a stress management technique to groups of people for 30 years. I'm wondering if you think the unity and community around Kamala's campaign is stronger than it was for Hillary Clinton because she laughs authentically and unencumbered. Is that grounding us permission while helping us connect? I guess for me, it's like, people are different. Some people laugh a lot and some people don't laugh a lot. And there's no one right way to be. I do think that joy is a strategy, as Pam, you have written, you have talked about, joy and laughter. They're absolutely a strategy. And I think that we can step into that perhaps in a way that, I'm making generalizations, but maybe that wasn't something that was available to Hillary Clinton as a generational situation, or maybe she's just not a person who laughs a lot. But I think that for me, it's like we're in this moment where we're going to seize the joy, we're going to seize the laughter, and it's our weapon and hug of choice. Pam, Blake, any thoughts on joy? And then I think Pam, we might want you to read us out.
I love joy. I love to laugh. I love love. I love this planet. This planet loves us back. We're here on purpose. We should take up the space and let the planet love us back and be brave and speak our truth. And, I think really just knowing in our bones and in our blood that we are made of the same thing as this planet and the hummingbirds and the orcas. We are here and we have a right to be here. And women in this fight, I think, are feeling that in a different kind of a way. I loved Hillary Clinton with every fiber of my being, and all I wanted was to live in her version of America. But my God, the patriarchy really chewed her up and spit her out. And I see that Kamala and I are the same age. We're both wood dragons. Tim Walz, too. And I really want to say, Tim Walz, what a hell of an ally. And his whole thing about like the weirdos was just like so perfect because fascists want you to fear them. They don't like to be laughed at, and they're a bunch of freaking weirdos, and they're doing some really weird shit. like he nailed it with that. It was so perfect, and that it then lifted off. Like when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, he just really did something important for this campaign. And so I was really glad that she picked him. Yeah, that's just, I think Rebecca Solnit wrote a piece in The Guardian this last week that's really good called What If Joy is a Strategy or something. Did you guys read that? You guys, can you believe me? Look at my patriarchal speech. You're my beloved women friends. Did you read that?
Yeah.
It's really good. And I think it is. What if joy is a strategy? Oh, let me just say it is a strategy, because this like darkness and gloom and doom and death and like it's over and the human experiment and humans are a cancer on the planet and all this talk, it's just like talk about a lead blanket of exhaustion. I'm like, look at the trees. How even better, plant a tree, like be in the trees, do what you can, feel the love of this planet, let it love you, put that love back any way you can, and then let joy be the strategy.
I had such a beautiful drive to Salt Lake City from Paonia today. I had little bits of weather come and go, so that meant that it was like a cloud opera the whole time. And the cottonwoods were all doing their golden thing. They're my personal tree. The light was just gorgeous everywhere I looked. I I feel so lucky to be a part of this planet and to get to experience beauty in so many places, so many ways. It's what a joy. It's absolutely a joy.
I want to just say that that's the other thing, is that wisdom, I really think, is knowing that more than one thing can be true at a time. And so then, like, yes, there's terrible wars and there's all this hatred that's being pumped into this cybersphere and, tech bros that want to rule the world. And it's freaking beautiful here. And I literally had a wild geese moment right before I stepped in here, where they're just honking their way in a perfect V over my house and all the golden cottonwoods. And so, like, we really have to just, like, let it be real that there's more than one thing that's true, and not be so binary, like it's not all bad. It's never going to be all good. It's going to be both and all the way. Pam?
Both both and.
Yeah, I guess I would say that well, I'll just tell a quick story because it's a story that makes everybody happy about being in the Safeway. Because this story is about joy being a strategy. I was in the Safeway in Denver and I was wearing my I understand the assignment t-shirt. I have many t-shirts for this tour, but one of them is I understand the assignment. And I was wearing it, and a large man with an American flag on his hat and big muscles came up to me and kind of cornered me a little bit in the dog food aisle. And he said, "What assignment do you understand?" And I said, "I understand that I have to do everything I can to make sure Kamala Harris is the next president of the United States." And so we stood there and swayed for a minute. It was kind of quiet. And he didn't say anything. So I said, "But if you're asking me what my literal t-shirt means, I said, I don't know if you know, but when Joe Biden handed the torch to Kamala, 40,000 Black women got on Zoom that night and they raised $2 million. And basically the message they sent out was like, hey, white women, do you understand the assignment this time? So that's what my shirt refers to. And then we swayed a little more and he didn't say anything. And I said, and I don't know if you saw the New York Times this morning with that like bogus headline, joy is not a strategy. But I'm here to say, like, the hell it is not. Because look around this grocery store, dude. Like, look at the women. Watch how they have this spring to their step. Watch how they're practically dancing through the aisles. That is because joy is a strategy, as it turns out. And then we swayed. And then I thought I was sort of out of things to say. And he said, what's your name? And I said, Pam, what's your name? And he said, Jerry. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, Pam. I served my country as a Marine for 29 years. And I did not do that just so that orange motherfucker could take us down. And we high-fived and we went on about our shopping. So I say joy is a strategy. And so is the earth. I mean, this book is full of how much I love my mother, my one true mother, the earth. And she's been there through this whole tour. She's been there after I wake up at 3 a.m. We should just text each other because I'm waking up at 3 a.m. all the time.
Okay, please
And then
do.
I get up and it's snowing or the sun's coming through the trees. And I think, okay, we're okay, Mom. We're all right. We're still here. So all of that Blake said too.
Love it. Well, Pam, will you read us out a little bit?
I will. I'll go to the end, the hopeful end part of this book so we can end on hope because we promised love and hope. And so I'm going to just sort of mash the last two little sections together and cut some of it out, but just to give you the feel of where we end up after all this talk of the history of reproductive rights in America and my own history and so forth. And we'll start with mercy. I talk a lot about mercy and grace in this book. Those are two words I come down on toward the end. Mercy is defined as compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is in one's power to punish or harm. Imagine what it would be like to live in a country where the candidate we voted for was the one we thought most likely to show people who are suffering compassion and forgiveness. Imagine a government who held mercy as its highest goal. Imagine living within a system who supported people in loving whom they loved, in dressing how they liked, in being who they were. Imagine what that kind of mercy would look like. Now imagine how your life would change if you showered that much mercy on yourself. I know this account is full of contradictions. I know it's weird to like wolf puppies better than babies. But I've been hurt by several humans in my life, one human most severely, and I have never, ever been hurt by a wolf puppy. I know some people, maybe even some policymakers, actually do believe life begins at conception, and generally speaking, those are the same people who believe in the existence of hell. Those people probably think I'm going there, and for all I know, they might be right. I know my neighbor is probably not actually trying to scare me with his American flag and twinkly lights. I know my neighbor probably never thinks of me at all. And just to prove I'm in good faith here, I will say that after 24 weeks or some other medical professional agreed upon marker of viability outside the womb, I think it is reasonable to consider the rights of the fetus, except in the case of rape or incest, except when the mother's life or health is in danger. This compromise, of course, was the one we lived with throughout my reproductive life. I imagine many of you, if you have picked up this book, have had an abortion. And if you did, it is more than likely you were screamed at as you walked in and out of the clinic. Maybe the clinic sent you an email warning you of this in advance. Probably you were called a murderer. Probably the screamers put signs right in your face with unrecognizable piles of bloody pulp on them. Probably they screamed that you were going to hell. These people have screamed at me One time when I was indeed going to have an abortion, but most times I was just going in for my yearly pap smear, for my regular cancer screenings, for all the stuff a woman has to do if she wants to stay alive. Outside my window tonight, lightning is flashing. Rain is pounding the metal roof, and when I wake up tomorrow, the first snow of the year will grace the top of Red Mountain. For the first summer in more than a decade, because of an unusually wet spring, no fires threatened the ranch, and this storm will certainly seal the deal. We had a variety and abundance of wildflowers: flax, bluebells, lupin, penstemon, fleabane, columbine, and every color of paintbrush in the high country we hadn't seen in decades. And the tiny seasonal creek the dogs like to drink out of when we go for our pasture walk thinned in late summer, but for the first time in years, it never failed. I take the time and space to write all of this because it proves to me, and maybe also to you, that the bad thing doesn't always have to happen. What this reminds me is that we are not dead in the water until we decide we are. I once had the opportunity to interview Toni Morrison, a day that lives in my memory as the best working day, perhaps the best day of any kind of my life. She said something to me she said a version of in many interviews, but the particularity of how she said it to me was especially delightful. She said, "I tell my students, when you get these jobs that you have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. This is not just some grab bag candy game." Far too many people making laws in this country have confused their position for a grab bag candy game. I would name them, but there are too many to count, and we all know who they are anyway. My most fervent hope is that by compiling this information and telling you as much truth as I know about myself with all my contradictions intact, I might help release you from your shame, your fear, your self-imposed bondage. I might help you to show yourself some mercy. I might help you feel empowered and free.
Pam, Blake, all of you who joined us tonight, thank you. Thank you for imagining a world where love remains, where joy is a strategy, where we care for one another in all of the ways that we can think of, in all of the times that we must, and we will. Thank you, thank you. We are going to close out now. Thanks for joining us, and Will is going to send us on our merry way.
Great. By which I mean, I just want to say thank you again to every single one of you who joined. This is a marvelous way to spend an evening. I wish we could do this again tomorrow. I wish we could do it on Tuesday. I look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday for what I hope is a glorious morning. Blake, Pam, Kirsten, thank you, thank you, thank you. There was one final comment in the chat from someone who has only read Pam's book twice, so she looks forward to a third reading to catch up with Blake. One of the things that's been remarkable as the co-executive director of Tory House Press with Kirsten, with this book in particular, people are not buying one copy. People are buying 4, they're buying 6, they're buying 7. They're giving this to their friends, they're giving it to their children, they're giving it to their daughters, their nieces, to their sons. Feel free. It's a marvelous book. If you have not read it, you have a treat in store. And I think you will want to pass it along. We call the size of this particular one a small, cool thing. It is made to fit in your pocket and to hand to the people you love. I dropped some last information into the chat. Go to Hell's Backbone Grill. It's the best place in the world. They're open till December 1st this year. They'll be back for next year's season in March or April. And Tory House Press, you can learn more. We are a nonprofit independent publisher based in Salt Lake City, Utah, but working with writers all across the country that are putting issues of the West in conversation with the past, present, and future of this ever-changing planet that we all love so much. Feel free to check us out, buy some books, make a donation. We just launched our end of year fundraising campaign. And lastly, go get Without Exception. You will find it at indie bookstores everywhere. You'll find it at bookshop.org. It is technically on Amazon, The Opaque and Terrible, although we would obviously encourage you to purchase it elsewhere. And there is a special discount code, FREEDOM, which will give you 15% off if you buy it directly from the Tory House Press store. There's a link there as well, but go get it wherever you would like. Request it from your library, give it 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads so that other folks can find it too. Thank you. I love this book. I love each and every one of you. It's been a delight. And with that, I wish you a marvelous night, and here's to the future. Take care, everybody.
Go enjoy, everyone.
Vote.
Vote.
Vote.